Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to this talk. It's called, it's called How to Plug In Your Clicker. It's a really neat talk. There we go. It's called, What Did You Just Say to Me? A little bit about me. My name is Jerry Gamblin. Right now, I'm the security specialist at the Missouri House of Representatives. Here's my contact information. Hit me on Twitter. That's probably where I'm the most noticeable and outspoken. There's a picture of my son. We're about the same. We both act like 5-year-olds. One of us has a good reason to. I work in a building full of people who love to communicate. And it might not seem like they do, but they really, really do. So I'm sitting back and I'm trying to figure out, why am I going to give this talk? And it's pretty simple. I suck at communicating. And it was costing me professionally. Here's how it works where I work. When it's time to come up with budget requests, we all get into a room and you plead your case. It's like, I really need a new firewall. And the sysadmin guy's like, we really need some new servers. And the network guy's like, oh, we got to update our core. And I was losing. And I was losing bad. I wasn't winning. I was, okay, Jerry, your priority's 4th on the list. We'll see if we can get to it. And we were never getting to it. So I needed to change that. So I fixed it. I put myself through a communications boot camp. And I thought it was a really good thing. I went back to school. I don't know if you guys know this. There's a website called Coursera, and I've taken 2 classes so far, one from Duke and one from the Georgia Institute of Technology, and they're really, really good classes. One of them cost me $50. It's How to Reason and Argue. I'm able to win all kinds of flame wars on the internet now. It's a really, really good class. It's like 8 weeks, and you have to do papers, and it's just like being back in college, and it's a real Duke professor. It was probably the best $50 I've ever spent. The other thing I did was first-year composition 2.0, just kind of get back into the basics of communicating. I took that class probably in college, but I wasn't thinking that I would need to be a good communicator in college. I thought I was going to be a computer guy and sit at my desk and not talk to anybody. But I really, really found out that it's the way you communicate is how successful you're going to be as a computer guy. I spent a lot of times in the library. I probably read 20 books on communicating, and I've brought 3 of them today. It's The Hard Truth About Soft Skills, Getting Past No. This is a great book on negotiating, and People Skills, how to apply yourself and listen to other people. These 3 books kind of are the basis of this talk. And I have these books, and I want to give them away. I brought them all the way over here to let you guys have them. So if you want one after the talk, please come and talk to me, and I'll be more than happy to give you a book. I also spent a really, really long time practicing. I practice all the time. You're not going to be a good communicator unless you practice. So I talk to a lot of mirrors. I figure out what I'm going to say, and I talk to the mirrors. And public speaking. Public speaking is one of the best things to do to get you out of your shell. I'm a shell guy. I like when I'm programming or when I'm working, I like to be in my office, and I like to be quiet, and I like to be by myself. Once I've started public speaking, it's kind of opened me up a little bit, and I've been able to get out and meet some neat people and talk to some people. Public speaking is one of the best things you can do to quickly increase your communication skills. And I know here there's the B-sides and there's all kinds of things. And if you're passionate about something, you really should, put yourself out there, submit a CFP, and do a talk. You'll be incredibly amazed at how well it helps you communicate to other people. And I had to throw this in here because it's true. Sometimes people need to see a doctor about their communication skills. Anxiety is a real thing. Pressure is a real thing. And there are some things that can't be fixed by some tips I'm going to give you that you really, really need to go and talk to to a doctor about and somebody who's trained in the profession. So here's kind of the meat of today's talk. And I'm going to go fast, and I knew this was going to be a fast talk. That's why they put me right before 10 o'clock. So we're going to be out at 10 o'clock right at regular time. But I have a few tips that I want to give you, and this is what I've taken. I've taken a couple of classes. I've taken those 2 classes I had listed there and about 2 more, and I've read a bunch of books. And, honestly, I've boiled down all that knowledge into these slides. And this is pretty well everything that I learned that I thought was valuable that I'm going to give to you guys. We're going to start with clear technical communications. This is my favorite story. This is an F-18 Hornet. When they first launched the F-18 Hornet, it has a heads-up display. It was the first plane that has a heads-up display. And the pilots were freaking out. They weren't doing their missions correctly. They weren't hitting as many targets as they were with the old F-16, and nobody could figure it out. They took it to a communications person. The communications person says the heads-up display has way too much information on there. It had flight speed, it had fuel, stuff that you don't need to know when you're in a fight. When you're in a fight with somebody, you don't care how much fuel you have left. You want to know how many missiles you have left, how many rounds of ammunition you had left. So they made a decluttered mode for the heads-up display that the pilots turned on when they're in battle. And now the F-18 is probably one of the best fighters that America has. So what this boils down to is that when you give somebody too much information, they can't process it, and it freaks them out, and they have lockup. And what is everybody's basic go-to standard for their answer? It's no, right? Like, if you don't understand a question, if your kid asks you something and you're not sure about it, most people's default is just to say no. And that's exactly what these pilots were doing. They were just shutting down. No, I can't take all this information. So what this means for communications is when you're communicating with somebody, the fewer facts you can give them, the more likely they are to say yes. If I'm trying to sell my boss an IPS, the more information I give him, the less likely he is to say yes. If I figure out what facts I want to give him, make sure the facts are facts that he needs, and write them down, and get ready and just give them 5 or 10 facts, I'm more likely to get an IPS than if I give them 100 facts on why this IPS is the best thing ever invented. Nobody wants to feel dumb, right? I was just on a panel where one of the speakers was talking about how a board, I was speaking on a panel, and we were talking about why pen testing is important. He was like, oh, a board doesn't care about pen testing. They don't want to see the report. And no, they do want to see the report. If you think that people that you're talking to aren't interested, or are dumb, or doesn't care about security, you're never going to get any kind of feedback or any kind of buy-in. Like, if you treat people dumb or try to dumb it down way too much, they're just not going to listen to you. It's human nature. One of my professors said you want to have the one-step rule. And that's how you guys pick your classes, right? If you're a pen tester, you're not going to go to a pen testing 101 class. Everybody wants to be talked to one step smarter than where they are. And you have to figure that out. You have to figure out how smart the person I'm talking to is, and then talk just above their level where that they're getting the information that you're giving them, but they're still staying engaged. I don't talk to my wife the same way I talk to my 5-year-old, or I'd be slapped. So you have to use different, and I know where my wife is, and I don't talk to my wife the same way, I talk about security that I do a colleague. You have to figure out where they're at, and you have to make the conversation interesting enough for them to stay connected. This is the 2-question rule, and I live by this. When you're in an important conversation, you should always ask 2 questions. And I don't know the questions. Those are your questions to come up with. It shows that you're interested, and it shows that you're engaged, and it doesn't take over the conversation. When I'm having a conversation or negotiation with somebody, I'm thinking, what are my 2 questions? Because if you ask 15, you're just an asshole, right? If you ask 2, you're saying, oh, I'm interested in this, I'm paying attention, and I want to know, but I'm not going to take over this conversation. I'm going to let this guy talk to me, and I'm going to come with my 2 questions, and they're going to be the best 2 questions I can come up with. Bring notes. I take notes everywhere. It's really changed the way I communicate. If I know I'm having a big conversation with my boss, I write down a bunch of notes about the subject. And it's so important to have those notes and to pre-think about your conversations. I mean, it changed the way that I'm looked at work. It changed the way that I'm promoted at work. It was a really, really good thing to start writing down notes and to start thinking about what I'm going to say way before it even happens. We're going to talk about body language next, and I know this is kind of a pseudoscience, but these tips really, really work, or they work for me. They might not work for you, but I really like them. And the first one is, think about your toes. This is a weird rule, but it really works. If you just think about your toes, think about your big toes, our bodies are dumb machines, and to think about your toes, you have to think about every other muscle in your body that leads to your toes, so it kind of centers your body. One of my communications instructors told me, they said, right before you give a big speech or you talk to somebody important, one of the best things you can do to calm your body is just to think about how your toes feel. And, I didn't believe her until I tried it. I mean, if you're just sitting in your chair and you're like, how do my toes feel? Your brain is a simple machine. It just feeds through your body. And you can't think about how your toes feel without thinking about how the rest of your body to your toes feel. All right, we're at the belt buckle rule, or what I call the naughty bits rule. When you're talking to somebody and you're engaged in a conversation with them and you want them to listen to you, you always subconsciously aim your naughty parts at them, or your belt buckle. It's a proven fact. Like if we go out here, you can watch. You can watch at 10 o'clock. If somebody is truly interested in a conversation they're having with somebody, they will be squared up and talking to them like this. If they're looking for their next conversation, where they want to go, they'll be turned this way, have their heads this way. Oh, yeah. But when we talk to people and we want them to listen to us and we're interested in them, we always square up our body and have a conversation face to face. That's what it means. That's what face to face means, is that you square up and you have that conversation. And of course, the folded arms. Nobody likes folded arms, and it's true. If you unfold your arms, folded arms means I want my space, and I'm not interested. It can also mean you're cold, but most of the times it means, I'm really not interested in what you're saying. Please babble on about security for another 5 minutes so I can go get my coffee. If you can get somebody to unfold their arms, that means that they're normally open to your communications and they're ready to talk to you. We're going to go on to the art of listening. And I truly believe this. You can honestly make more friends or be more productive at work by listening to your coworkers for 2 months than you can by trying to tell them how awesome you are for 2 years. If you just sit down and let somebody tell you their story and not try to interject your own story, you'll be more popular. People will value your opinion and trust you. I mean, I see it all the time when we're out here, right? Like, you're in the middle of a conversation and the guy you're talking to is ready or was ready before you even finished your first half sentence to tell his story, right? What this is about is listening. We want to be active listeners, and when you're listening, it's important to really try hard not to give clues that you're ready to talk. How many people have this nervous tick when you're in a conversation and you want to get a point in that you start moving your arms? And when was the last time you had a conversation with somebody and your main goal in that conversation was just to listen to what they had to say? I wish mine was more, and I try to work on this, and it's hard. I called my wife, and yeah, I want her to tell me what she's thinking, but really I have a list of stuff that I want to get to talk to her about, and I want to run that laundry list off. And I didn't really call to listen to her, and she didn't call to listen to me. We called to exchange information. But when you slow down and start listening to people, it really changes the way you're perceived and the way people listen to you. The 2-second rule. I love the 2-second rule. When somebody stops talking, wait 2 seconds before you say anything. Because maybe they're just getting ready to, clear their throat or whatever, or they're not done. 2 seconds is plenty of time for the human brain to process if it's going to say something, so you don't cut them off. Because I fly on planes a lot, and the truth is people want to tell you stuff, right? Like, people are born oversharers. If you give people the opportunity to talk to you, and you actively listen to them, and you seem interested, people will tell you anything. My buddy's an FBI agent, and he does interrogations, and I know you guys have probably all seen the movie where the FBI guy slams people around. That's not how they do it. They just go in, and they use these same techniques. I showed them these slides. That's exactly what we do in interrogations. We're nice to the people. We let them talk. We don't ask them a zillion questions. We say, it's like, hey, what's going on? And normally you let somebody stew long enough, we don't like quiet. We're going to start talking about what's going on. Very few people say, I want my lawyer, and stay quiet. They're going to tell you something because they want to explain their actions to some level. And now we have the rest. Patience is the hardest thing that you can have. And as a parent and as a security guy, I run low on patience a lot, right? Because we don't want, dumb people doing dumb stuff on our networks and, breaking it. But if you have patience, if you're known as a guy who's patient with people who will show that IT guy, that first level IT guy 4 times how to reset a WSUS client or to how to install this, your AV correctly, you're going to gain a lot of points, and people are going to want to communicate more with you. This is probably one of my favorite quotes ever. Nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. If you're not excited about what you do, you'll never do anything great. If I'm not excited about going to work, I'm not going to do a good job. If I'm not fired up about, playing in that basketball game, I'm going to do a terrible job. It really boils down to having enthusiasm for what you do. I also really, really like to map out conversations. I have a whole book of conversations I've mapped out that I'm going to have with my boss. Like, I need to talk to my boss about these 15 things. And, check the list off. But I also don't get to the point where they're scripted. I make the list, and then I try not to look at the list again because, I'm not trying to read my boss a grocery list. I'm trying to have an organic conversation with him. And when you have those conversations with your boss, they really, really open up to you. And it's amazing what they will tell you. I statements are one of the most powerful statements that you can ever make in the English language because they don't hurt people's feelings, right? Because people can think you're dumb. People think I'm dumb, and that's fine with me. If I want to say, I think that we should replace the firewall next year, that's Jerry's opinion. That's fine, Or I think that we should buy this antivirus. Okay, that's Jerry's opinion. That's a non-offensive answer. If I say we need to buy this firewall or we need to buy this AV, I've then changed it, right? I'm not talking about what I think. I'm talking about us as a group. I'm now making decisions for other people. If you want to be inoffensive and really get your point across, I statements are the best thing that you can use. Because, I think, I want to do, I would like to do, are way more palatable to people than we're going to, we have to, we need to, Tone. Do you guys ever worry about your tone when you're talking to somebody? I mean, outside of the time you snap at people, do you ever concentrate on your tone when you're speaking at work? When somebody comes into your office and you're typing up an email and they start talking to you, do you take a second to make sure that you're speaking in the right tone and you're just not snapping at them? I have to work on that, right? Like I'll be doing something and some guy comes in and asks me a question, and I want to give them the answer, but I want to take a half a second to make sure when I answer them, I'm not going to sound like a total jerk. Because that's another thing we're bad at, right? It's like, hey, what's the, where's that key located at? Or where's that install file located at? And you're like, blah, blah, blah. And you seem like you're cranky when you're not, but you didn't take that second to center yourself before you talk. Good timing. This is probably one of the most important things. I don't talk to my boss on Monday mornings before noon, on Friday afternoons, afternoon, or, any day before 9 and after 4. I just don't start important conversations with him. And it's changed the way we communicate because I'm not going to go ask my boss to make a decision item on something when his mind is already shut off and he's thinking about how he's going to get his kid to baseball or, what he's having for dinner, because we all shut down. And if you take that time and say, these are the time that it's really, really good to talk to my boss. My boss is really receptive to conversations about heavy-duty things Tuesdays at 2 p.m. because, he's back in the flow of work, all the fire has been put out. This is when I can talk to him. And it's simple stuff like that. I never, before I started taking these communications class, thought about when I approached conversations. Like, it was nothing for me to shoot off one of those 4:30 emails on a Friday that everybody hates. Hey, we got to do this, blah, 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 and then you see that, and that's the only thing you can think about all weekend when you're at home. You guys have all got those emails, right? And most times those emails aren't super important. You could have waited till Tuesday to send those out and then had a resolution and everything been fine. But if you don't think about the timing when you communicate with people, you're going to have a bad time, and people are going to think, they're not going to like you as much as if you take the time and figure out when it's appropriate to have these conversations. Stop talking. And this is kind of weird, but we talk too much as adults. We ramble on. We need to figure out how we can get our point across in the fewest words. Just like the heads-up display thing. You want to have concise communications because concise communications always win. The longer your message is, the less likely you are to read it. I have a buddy who lives out in San Francisco. His emails are never longer than 2 sentences. He will never, and that's his whole thing. He's a CEO of a startup out there. He says, if I can't say it in 2 sentences, I'm not emailing it because people won't read it. So I'm not that bad, but if I can't get an email point across in 2 or 3 sentences, you need to have a stand-up meeting. You need to call the person. It's kind of the Twitterification of email. It's short, precise communications. So we're going to have a recap real quick, and then I'm going to get you guys out of here so you can go get some gin. And I'll be joining you because this is my last talk for the day. Remember to declutter your conversations. The less information you give, but the more important information you give, the more likely you are to get a yes. Feel your toes. It works for me. It might not work for everybody else, but if I ever want to center myself before I have a big meeting, just thinking about my big toes is a trick that works for me. Aim your naughty parts at people. They really, really do enjoy when you aim your naughty parts at them. Just watch out here. When we go out here, you'll be able to tell. If you look for it, if you watch when people are talking, the people who are really into a conversation will be squared up to each other and talking. The people who are looking for their next conversation, trying to find that more interesting person to talk to or where their friends are, they're all turned this way and, not really talking, but they're having a conversation, not trying to be rude, but they're looking. If somebody's in a real conversation, you always turn together. I statements are important. If you learn anything from the day and you want to change what you do when you go back to work on Monday, is to change the we have to I have to, I want to, I think we should. It's way less offensive. And that one tip alone right there is probably worth your guys' 30 minutes. I mean, I really love that tip. It's really changed the way I communicate, changed the way people think about the way you communicate. I statements aren't offensive. I mean, they can be in some context, but when you're in a meeting, I want to do this, I think we should do this, is way better than we're going to do this or we should do this. And I told you guys this was short, and we're going to get out to 10 o'clock, so that's all I have today. Here's my contact information again, and like I said, I brought these 3 books, and I really want to give them away so I don't have to take them back. So if you're interested in reading any of them, please come and get one after we're done here.